that's me. We can
All right.
get more
Yeah,
in depth with the guardrails.
We'll dive deep. Don't worry, we'll have plenty of time and get deep into things.
So yeah.
Yeah, I remember the days when we used to write those by hand. It's painful.
Yes, it's very long. It's too long per development hour, right?
There was these bunch of founders that were really great, and they basically vibe coded their way into $1 million of fundraising, right? Okay, so all right. Thanks everybody for coming and joining our webinar today. So today we'll be talking about how vibe coding and coding agents accelerate startup execution. It's my pleasure to welcome our panelists. We have Annie and Flippo, and Annie Flippo is a chief data officer at Urgently. Why don't you go ahead and introduce a little bit about yourself and maybe tell us about your team, just briefly so that we can get a sense of where you work.
Yeah, I mean, I started out as an engineer and then kind of moved into product management. And then the last 20 years or so been in data. I myself as a data scientist way back in the day, kind of, moved around, careers are meandering, and then eventually kind of ended up at chief data officer. Here I'm in charge of the data and data science roadmap and executing on them. And so we've been doing a lot of AI algorithm for like the last 3-4 years, kind of quietly before the AI kind of term blew up. Just because automation and using algorithm to find patterns is much more efficient than using humans coding up all the rules. And so my team consists of the BI, business intelligence, data science, and data engineering team. I collaborate really tightly with the engineering team that does all of our mobile web app. So yeah, we do AI code generation, AI agents, kind of like more strategically, not kind of like building a brand new app. Although there are people that are non-technical that are doing that, and we had to put guardrails around it. So that's me. We can get more in depth with the guardrails.
We'll dive deep. Don't worry, we'll have plenty of time and get deep into things. So next on the panel is Mark Gilpatrick. Mark is a product management leader who's specialized in cloud-based and fintech products. Mark, you want to tell everybody a bit about yourself, your team?
Yep. So start off in chemical engineering, worked at Qualcomm, have been doing a lot of startups before Qualcomm and after. I like the startup space mostly, and right now I'm the director of product at a company called Simple Exam, where we do basically medical, legal / expert witness technology. And our team is extremely small. So my understanding is smaller than the other teams here. It's about 10 people in-house with about a 9-person dev team contracted. So
fantastic. Awesome. Glad to have you here. Next to the panel is Chiara Gelinas. She's the Director of Engineering at Productive. Please go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about your team.
Hi, I'm Chiara. My background is mostly a back-end engineer. I'm very hands-on, although this is kind of my first role where I'm really a little bit more hands-off. So it's been interesting. My team, so Productive is a SaaS management tool. So we have a lot, we grab a lot of data that comes in and flows through integrations. And it allows companies to manage their SaaS platform, their spend, and get visibility into it, as well as AI visibility as to what things are in the platform that have AI. That's the most recent thing that we did. I have a team of roughly 20 people that are in my org. So it's like a few engineering managers and 14 full-time and a handful of contractors that are working on building the platform out, maintaining, and all of that good stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So Just quickly about me, for those who don't know, I'm the moderator for today. I'm the CEO of AI consulting company called Hyperion Soft. As an AI and a machine learning consulting firm, we help business use AI and machine learning to boost efficiency, growth, and innovation. So we're gonna dive right in, and I want to start off maybe just by talking about the definitions behind these tools, right? So we've heard things like vibe coding and coding agents. How do you guys think about how they're defined and what they are? Right now, the some of the biggest names in the space are tools like Cursor, Lovable. But do you guys have any thoughts? Like, are they all kind of in one basket, or do they have like several subcategories? Maybe Annie, you want to chime in some thoughts there if you have.
Yeah, from the product, so we have two distinct groups. We have product management and the software engineering group. So the engineers use kind of coding helpers, I would say, so those will be the GitHub Copilot, that's Claude AI kind of thing. And
the auto completion, right?
Auto completion, just ask just instead of looking for, because there's so much syntax out there, right? And so a human can't possibly remember them all. So, sometimes you just Google it. And back in the day, you might go to Stack Overflow. Oh, okay, yeah, that's the way to do it. But now we just ask the chat agent. So, so that kind of that's for kind of like the expert engineers. They use coding in a certain way, which is, hey, give me 3 examples how to do this, and then look at it. Okay, this is the best one. Stick it in my code. The product management use it a little differently. They use it to create proof of concept, the visuals, or even slightly working applications to show engineering what they want, instead of writing like super detailed, product requirements and spec and things like that. So they would show a prototype kind of thing. So I think that's what our current two use cases are. So that's will be the Lovable, the Bubble, those kind of app. You can just create it, and then change color and change this is clickable, this is not clickable, things like that, and then actually show a prototype to engineering. Okay, and what happens when you do this kind of thing. So that's how we use it in our
Okay, makes sense. Mark, you have anything to add or anything different that you want to react to? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Thank you very much. So I think the biggest thing is sometimes what I see is often we're reacting more to prototypes that engineering is building with vibe coding, just as they guess at what we want the functionality, or if there's proposed, we're in a much smaller team. So sometimes we propose a new feature and it's like, oh, let's just build a prototype really quick. And then they'll show it over. But the other side of it is, there's some LLM uses now inside of product development software. So sometimes writing requirements, I could just autofill if I give it enough, kind of data to go off of. So our Jira, sometimes some of the acceptance criteria or test cases are actually AI generated. And that helps out quite a bit. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the days when we used to write those by hand. It was painful.
Yes. It's very long. It's too long per development hour, right? So that's the big critical part you need to get through.
Nice. All right. Chiara, anything you would like to add or supplement?
Sure. I think the original thing was was it vibe coding versus AI agents? So we don't have too many of the AI coding agents because of the cost. So there's generally a fee per person that you have to pay to use things like GitHub Copilot, or I think Cursor is one of them. And then you also have to have it approved by your security team. So we generally don't have a lot of AI agents in play, but people definitely want to use them. So what people are doing though is more along the lines of using our approved Gemini LLM to spit out how would I do this? I've used it for unit tests. If you just pass it your code and it will just spit you out the best unit tests. It's amazing. So I think there's a handful of different use cases that are happening for us as far as like the kind of vibe coding. It's not the true vibe coding, but it is kind of like, hey, supplementing what you don't know. And if you don't know a language, you can really get in there and like ask it to do stuff for you, because sometimes you just get like writer's block. So yeah, so I find it's good to like loosen things up to get you started, especially if you're completely lost. So
Okay. That's really interesting, because you brought up, cost, which I think is very critical. A lot of people don't think too much about it because, hey, my boss is paying, but actually it gets expensive. I know the people that do these weekend projects, they can really run up, hundreds of dollars for just the whole weekend. So other than cost, let's assume for a minute, like if cost is of no question here, what other factors would it influence your decision to adopt a software? And maybe help us understand what are some of the software coding agents that you're using right now. And so we'll start from the beginning again. Annie, you want to chime in there? Sorry, Annie, you're on mute.
5 years working from home, we're still saying, hey, you're on mute. So so the software engineering, I can speak more to the data science engineers. They a lot of times is just like they're experts, right? They're data scientists, so they just say, hey, I have this model, what is the best way to figure out the features, or what are the best ways to figure out how do I improve model accuracy, how do I explain this model to my boss? Basically, that's what they always type in.
Sure.
And so a lot of times they just sorry, what was the question again?
Sorry, so we talked about cost, right? So other than cost, what factors would your data scientists consider in adopting which tool to use, right? There's so many in the market. So do you pick one for them, or do they get to pick one for themselves? Like what happens, in your organization?
So we're a public company. We have a third party now. We're engaging to actually draft down our AI policy, the use of AI. Unbeknownst to me, people are using whatever they want. And so now we're like, oh, okay, yeah, please don't do that. And they're uploading stuff, right? Like they're uploading, not my team, but somebody else, uploading our company data. They're like, hey, here's a CSV file. Give me the trend and do all the analysis and stuff like that, because they don't want to submit a ticket to business intelligence because it takes too long, right? Whatever. So I say, hey, but don't do that. Don't upload anything to a third party because they'll own the data forever. And so now we're drafting a policy. And so one of the problem is that is the code that generates secure. Like we already heard about that. Like the T app was completely vibe coded is in an app, and now got huge data breach. They're in a lawsuit, and so we cannot be in that situation. So security and compliance is very high for us. We have a completely separate team that we have to go through for everything. So I think security, and also like I say, the code might work, but might not be the most efficient. Because you have to think about how does the AI coding agent come up with the code, right? They have to learn it from somewhere, and usually is learning from a public repository. So that is GitHub, GitLab, whatever those other places, but they're not learning from the most expert code repository. They're not learning from the Microsoft behind the scene code. They're not learning from Google, back-end code. They're just learning from public available code. So it may not be the most efficient. And so we often have to it works and then rewrite it.
Makes sense. So Mark, for you, I guess your company is a lot smaller. I doubt like data privacy is probably top of your list when it comes to choosing a tool, right? Tell us.
Actually, sorry, go ahead.
No, tell us like what happens at your company.
Yeah, so we don't hook our cursor or anything to our code base directly. So we often just ask for like prototyping stuff. Because we have like HIPAA compliance and stuff. It's not directly related to what we do, but it is a big concern that we are compliant even if we're not required to be.
Sure.
And then, so another part of it, so Annie, I would 100% agree. And then another part of it too is for me, like what stage of development and the handoffs that we're going to be doing. So there's a lot of development in the kind of prototyping lo-fis and stuff like VO and whatnot. But I know that it's going to give, similar to what you're saying, I know it's going to give a certain quality of answer, and same with a certain quality of answer if I draft up like a product, how to do a product requirements documentation, for instance. And so I had to draft up the AI policy at my company, actually, and a big part of it is discussing that the solution is often probabilistic and often kind of biasing towards what is a common answer and what is like just out there publicly. So, you know, having it date and time stamped when you do the handoff, stating what you used, how you used it, just for, you know, just to unbias whatever solution that it gave at the time. So if it is used later on, people could acknowledge in what way it was generated. So that's something that we also do now inside of the company internally when we do vibe, quote unquote, vibe code something. So yeah.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So it seems like you have more of an established process that you put down, right?
I vibe coded the AI policy document, so no,
Good.
but I did use it to generate some of it, you know, like it's interesting what in and of itself it could critique, right? So
Sure.
that's kind of a funny thing in and of itself, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to have human in the loop. I don't believe in doing something without any human input. I think at this point, the AI is just not there yet. But Chiara, I know we talked about cost as number one driver for you to adopt some AI tool. Anything else you'd like to add there besides?
Yeah, if cost was not a factor, it's around like there's just what everybody else has said. There's security policies. We do have one. We have a vetted one. We use Gemini LLM. So if we were to go and get a different one, there would be a whole process of like, okay, cool, like you're going to use Cursor. Can Cursor hook up to like Gemini, or do we have to vet a new one? And around like what we would choose would probably be a combination of like what do developers want to use based on what they've heard out in the field, right? Are they hearing that like GitHub Copilot is better? Are they hearing that Cursor is better? You know, we would probably ask the team like, hey, what would you like to use? And kind of approve one, right? Not let everybody free for all it, because yeah, we have to make sure that our stuff is secure. So
makes sense. So basically you want to standardize what people use and how they use it, right?
Yeah, for the type of company that we are, especially with like the new AI Viz stuff, we definitely cannot be just like letting things out into various LLMs. We have to have it like everything under control. So it's not quite like HIPAA, but still. So.
Sure. Yeah, I think, I mean, this is just my 2 cents, right? A lot of it has, I guess, evolved over the last year or so. I think in the beginning, people used to copy and paste stuff, right, from one LLM to the IDE. But then now I think, you know, with some of these more advanced coding agents, like you could put guardrails where you are saying, hey, I don't want anything to be uploaded. I want guardrails, right? You can have the embedding, right, up there, but maybe everything else like the code doesn't go up there. Or maybe you should have these ignore files that should never at all be exposed. But these various ways that I've seen people kind of deal with this. So on to the next question. Let's talk about what are the best use cases for these AI assisted coding agents? Like, I know, Chiara, you've talked about unit tests in the past, but let's dive into some of these a bit, because a lot of people, when they sign up for this webinar, they all want to hear, okay, how do I be faster? How do I be more effective, right? So I love to hear, you know, from your experience or your team's experience, what are the best places to use these coding tools? Maybe we start with Annie again.
Yeah, so the data science team mostly use Python, and the engineering team mostly use Java. So I think for the data science team, they're already experts in Python. So what they do is, when we sometimes do a lot of code review and pair coding, and so when I look at it, and they're just like, oh, hang on, just let me see, I have a data frame. How do I iterate through it? And then I'll give you 3 different options, and you're like, oh, this is actually the one I want. So that is the most efficient way how they use it, right? So they're just using it as like kind of I don't know, back in the old days, read the manual kind of thing. They use it as like reading the manual. So like, how do I do this? And then, but what we found is that's not good is it does the basic stuff pretty well. It doesn't do the like more advanced stuff at all. Like if you want object-oriented Python, doesn't do that. It doesn't ever suggest you like decorators and things like that. Like the more advanced stuff to make your code very compact and fast, it doesn't do that because I imagine just probably they don't have a lot of that stuff to learn from the public repository. So when I look at it, I look at the code, I'm like, wow, this is a lot of verbose code. And then it creates a lot of code sometimes. And I'm like, I can do this in 3 lines. Why is it like, a 20-line block of things? Can you slim this down? It's like the more code, the more things that could break, right? Slim it down. They're like, oh, okay. And then they have to think about it. And they're like, yeah, you use your brain. Don't vibe code it. Now you need to you got it working, just slim it down. So I think it does the simple things well, get it fast, but doesn't do the more kind of complex logic very well. That's what I found.
Yeah. So take that, right? Like if you use too much of it, basically over time, it builds on top of stuff that's very, very, very feeble, and eventually it will collapse. So I hear the same thing from people from time to time as well. Mark, you have anything you'd like to add there?
So what I find is that on the product side, if I ask it something that requires a couple questions in, it's never going to get it. So for instance, like I just tested out like a product question on it. And like its recommendation was to like allocate a budget for marketing spend that was bigger than what the total population of the city would have been. So things like that, those are things I don't think it's good for. Oftentimes when I get handoffs from engineers, I think the better use case is, something that just requires a lot of work, but is like relatively common. So like one time we have like a multi-sided marketplace on our product essentially. And so they wanted to spin up like another portal login simulation. And then like, what would that screen be? That was a great use case just to kind of touch things, figure out things, and then say, oh no, this is wrong. This is wrong. Here's where we could get. Saying I think is big, but not necessarily things that require like, getting to the why of things for me.
Cool. Chiara, anything else to add? I know unit test was great. Did you want to dive into
So I'm trying to remember where we started. It was what is it good for, or what can you use it for to improve your productivity, right?
Yes.
So so I think yes, like if you're in, it's good for a scenario you don't know this particular platform well, you don't know the language well. I've literally been in that situation when I was at Calendly, because I'm not a Ruby developer and I needed massive amounts of help because I can't read Ruby. So that was really good for that. I think it's very good for POCing things. It is not your final product, right? Like if you want to vibe code, get something running locally that just to prove that it works, yes, it's gonna be much faster. But to put that in production, no. Like there is way too much that you have to do to like make it better. The other thing that is like interesting, I think, is also the voice of the code. So if everybody is using an LLM, you're going to get like different looking code, right? The patterns are all funky. So it's not, you're never going to want to take it and just be like, this is it. Like, no, like there's going to be that same code review process where you could actually be in a situation where you put the reviewer in a weird spot because they're going to be like, this doesn't look like a lot of the other stuff that we do, right? Like, so Yeah, what I think it's good for that POC understanding what it is, but it's not going to replace your developer and your need to have like production level code. So if you're a startup, you want to get like a POC up, you want to be able to fundraise with it. Yes. But like that is not what you want to put out into the market ultimately, because it's not good. So yeah.
Totally makes sense. And I want to maybe segue into this thing about tech debt, right? I heard this really funny story. There was these bunch of founders that were really great, and they basically vibe coded their way into $1 million of fundraising, right? And so that was iterations and iterations of vibe coding on Lovable. They got it to work really well, but once the check hits their bank account, now they need to do something very specific to fulfill a requirement, right? Because the investor want to see something happening, and now so some engineer had to go in, but when engineer opened the hood, they don't recognize anything because everything was just a wrangle mess, right? So, question for the panel. How do you manage tech debt in this case, right? I think it's very obvious there is value. Having $1 million in the bank account is lovely. I'll take that anytime, right? But we still got to deal with the tech debt, right? Because we have to deliver. Now we have the money. How do we manage that, right? If you were being charged, if you are responsible for handling this, how would you deal with that? Annie, why don't you give us your wisdom on this?
I hire very expert humans and start from scratch, because I think the vibe coding is, like you say, it was great as a prototype. You got the funding. What is the funding for? The funding is to make this scalable. How do you scale it? Probably not with coding agents again, because if you would have done it, it would have done it in the first place with a non-technical person, right? Like the founder who's non-technical.
Yeah.
But you really do at some point need some expert, at this time at least. Like, who knows, maybe in 5-10 years you might not, but right now you still need kind of like an application architect who can maybe also do data and also do security, and like those different duties, someone has to oversee it. Maybe it could still be vibe coded, but it has to have a human judge to say, yes, stamp it, yes, this is good, this is not good, whatever. And then maybe you don't have to hire as many humans as before. Like, I think, right, large enterprise SaaS software used to have a lot of people. Now it's just slimming down, and just have some of the people with experience building this stuff kind of take what it's written and say, kind of reverse engineer, like, what is it trying to do? And okay, all right, so I have some starter code, which is great, right? Better than nothing. So I think that's what you would have to do if you want to scale and be secure and all that stuff.
Yeah, great answer. Mark, anything? Oh, sorry, Emil.
Of course. No, I don't have anything to add on this one. This one is
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Chiara, do you have anything?
To be honest, like, startup mess that springs up is not new, right? Like
Sure.
Doing it with an LLM versus all of the startup like tech debt I have seen it's like the same problem, right? Ultimately. So the only difference is like there are people that are very non-technical creating the mess, which maybe it's slightly worse, right? I think if you do that, like, and you have to know what you're getting into. You're like, this is a prototype. And you have to know not to promise that you can extend or scale it. You have to at least have an advisory engineering person that can tell you, like, don't promise X by this date because of what you've done, right? It's kind of like one of those things where you're like, I'm gonna have to rewrite this, or at least I at least have a way to test that this is going to work in the market, and then you rewrite a lot of it based on what you learned, like, essentially. So that's essentially what I would add to this. It's not a new problem. It's just a different source of it.
That's cool. Great. So we touched on a little bit about human resources, right? So I know all of you have some managerial responsibility or leadership responsibility in your team, how are you envisioning, the hiring trend and and the actual hiring practice for the next 6 to 12 months in your team? Like, are you right now trying to put a hold until we see more light at the end of the tunnel? Because there's been a lot of layoffs, right? Just curious of how are you guys managing, the hiring practice, with AI now, of course, as well in the horizon. Annie.
Yeah, so we're already seeing a little bit of this. We used to like float up, very promising resumes and then give them a call. But all the resumes are now super customized. You can't tell if one person is actually better than another person. Everybody's using AI to put in your job description and put in there, and then boom, everybody's ranking really high. So, which is a problem, right? Like, so one, it's very hard to vet out the candidates, and two, we give take-home exam because we don't want people to be like, hey, you're gonna come pair coding with us, and some people do better in that situation, some people don't, even though they may be brilliant coders, that maybe they're just not good under like that kind of pressure. So we try to take it away and give them take home, and then do that and bring it back. But now we can't do that either, because when we take home, then they just vibe code the hell out of it, and then everybody passes, and it like also makes that test not good. So now we have to go back to pair coding, which is unfortunate because some people are great programmers, great architects, but they're just not good under that kind of pressure. When they're like left to their own devices, they can just crank out really brilliant stuff. So, but unfortunately with the AI coding thing, I can no longer do that. So I need to go back to the way we used to do it, which is live coding. Share full screen. If you want to use AI, we want to see it, things like that. Because we want people who are that actually know the subject matter expert. You can vibe code because, then people are doing that at work, but we don't want that to be your first source of knowledge, right? So that's how it's changing our recruiting process.
I see. That's really interesting. Mark, what about you guys?
So for me, it's put on a lot more expectation to focus less on the data and focus more on the logic. So if I give questions and stuff, that's, like a harder strategy question or a future development question, and there's a lot of good data that I know that's out there. I'm looking for solutions that kind of dive deep, or if there's boundary conditions that they didn't identify or assumptions they didn't identify. The other part of it is I see product openings kind of really opening up more because I think that they are pairing like less engineering staff to each product person, generally speaking.
Wow.
But in our company, there's kind of two sides to this equation. So, AI is kind of helping business grow for us. It's proliferating who would be buying our product. And so a part of that is, we have more feature development that we have to do. So the hiring need is becoming greater in our company. So it's kind of, how does it affect your market too, right? And that's a big part of the hiring practice. So even though people are more efficient in-house, doesn't mean that we're pacing to what's required or what needs to be developed, really.
Makes sense. Good answer. Chiara?
Yeah, similarly, we're not reducing because of more efficiency. It's just there's just more work to do. We are definitely not holding. I've been through a hiring, I want to say it's hell because I'm in interviews all the time. So but yeah, I think like we do not a take home, we do live coding, which I agree with Annie. It is not great for everybody. And it's kind of crappy that we have to do it. But we've even seen instances where we are pretty sure people are using AI like in the exercise, and we're like, nah, like, because once you ask them to do something additional that is like outside the scope, they just fall flat, and you're like, okay, so it's it's interesting. We're seeing that happening. We had some candidates even that looked completely fake. So we were like looking at like the resume and we're like, hey, this one person looks pretty good. And then our like recruiter was like, this is fake. And you could tell based on like when they said they used certain technologies that didn't exist. Just everything about it was like, okay, this, and she picked it out. So it's really on the recruiter, I think now, your first point of contact to be able to like screen these people, because it's nuts. We also have a huge number of people for our IC2 level, like unbelievable number of people, and it's really hard to screen through them. But the senior engineers are very hard to find. So, and that is, I think that's going to remain the case regardless of AI, because you need them to be able to discern like how to write the good code that the AI may or may not give you. So, yeah.
Makes sense.
I
So
also want to add one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we have data scientist position open, we get thousands, like 3,000 resume in a 1 week span. So I've noticed that a lot of resume has the same content, like the summary or something, because everybody's vibe coding does either using the same, Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever it is, and they're putting in the same job description, and it comes back out. The robot has learned, oh, the user likes this. Oh, when I get this input, the user likes this. So then I'm like, hey, the summary looks, and then I go open to resume. They're almost identical,
I know
but they're different people.
that's crazy.
Well, I think they're different people. I don't know. Maybe it's the same person. Keep submitting. Maybe I'm not getting 3,000, like 200 people, but we're getting 3,000 submissions.
So if people walk in to your office and or try to apply for a job, and they tell you they've never used any of these AI coding tools before, would you still hire them? Like, is this now like a requirement for you guys, or you guys don't really care that much?
I don't care.
You don't?
I actually do, because it's easy to learn how to use it. So if they come into an org where everybody else is using it, they'll quickly be like up to speed. Oh, I should use this, right? So I to some extent, it might actually be refreshing to find somebody that doesn't use it, because like I'm like, cool, you actually know how this algorithm works. Oh, you studied this, right? So I would prefer it, to be honest. So
Yeah, maybe I should submit a one-line resume, right? It's like, I know code.
I can write my own code. The end. That's my resume.
I would absolutely not hire somebody that has not used any tooling or doesn't have familiarity with like a broad range of tooling. I know it's not exactly the coding, but if you're a product person and you're not really well aware of the products that are out there and the tooling to be productive, then, and more importantly, how people are starting to interact with products, because I do think a lot of the AI stuff is really changing the paradigm of how people interact with technology. So if they're not familiar with how those interactions are occurring and those use cases are occurring, then it's a no-go for me. But it's slightly different, so not to yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think senior engineers, like when I say senior, like people who've been around 30 plus years, they don't need coding. My husband is a principal software engineer at Oracle, been there for like 25 years. He's a guy, I don't need that stuff. But my kids who are in college, right, they're second year, coming into second year, fourth year, they've been using it since like high school.
Yeah.
Right? They just want to double check if their code is okay, or they don't want to double check whatever, not just code, but like they're writing essays, make sure that's okay, like things like that. They're very, very flexible. They know some platforms that I've never heard of.
Sure, there's so many. Yeah, and speaking of, I guess thinking about next generation, right? There are people, especially this year, having a really, really hard time finding a full-time job, and especially those with CS degree. And some of it is attributed to adoption of AI. Some of it is, whatever, the economy. But what advice do you have, for our new generation incoming graduates, how to manage this for their own career growth, so that they can, confidently be employed by a company? Any thoughts?
I I would say learn the product side of things.
Mhm.
Learn UI, learn how people interact, learn economics.
Yeah.
Because those skills are, even in big companies, those are kind of skills that they're somewhat training testing for, maybe not directly for senior level ones. And then it's also giving you an option for career path. There's a lot of ex-technical people that are product people.
Mhm.
I think it's a easy pivot because technical stuff is way harder. And you can give a lot better of an answer as a technical PM. I'm going to say something really salacious here, but I think you can give a better answer as a product person with a previous technical background than somebody that's not technical. So I think the product skills, I also think it helps open you up for solopreneurship, stuff like that. But that's my safety proof right there.
Very nice. I've also heard from other engineering leaders, they say you got to learn the craft still, learn various software languages, frameworks, compilers, the build process, building tools, deployment tools, and have to know it all, right? But you can use AI to assist you, but you got to learn the craft. Yeah. Good stuff. So we're gonna open up to questions. We're about time. I have some questions. I'll take questions from from the chat if you guys have any. But if not, I also have. Maybe I'll start with some questions that were submitted to me when they registered for this webinar. And so here's one from Abby, and basically she said, I'm a designer founder who is looking to fundraise. How should I be thinking of investment in my first hires now that we can go further in product development without engineering? Thoughts on that?
I wouldn't say you can go further without engineering. Like that the way that's phrased, it sounds like I could just do it. I don't need any engineers. I think that that's probably not a good setup long term. And you'll end up like the one with the Lovable where they just kind of threw this thing together and then they couldn't expand upon it. I think you need at least one skilled, experienced engineer that maybe you could then kind of like use some contract people or use AI. Like don't start without any engineering.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else?
I second that. I think one big thing that a lot of founders are not good at is leaning into their weakness. So knowing what you can't answer and what you can answer is really the crux of the problem. And if you're not a technical person, it's usually better to hire that person that's an expert in that area than it is to say, I could do it all myself. But so I totally second what you're saying, by the way.
Good. Great. Another question from the audience. How to incorporate AI coding agents into my development process to decrease the amount of manual code I must write and allow me to complete projects faster and reliably?
I'm not sure how to answer that one. I mean, how do you just try using one, right? Like it will spit out the code for you if you add it to your IDE or if you use something like Cursor, it's going to like suggest you the things, right? So I do think that that's going to improve. Again, I go back to my unit test thing. Just copy your code, paste it into the LLM, ask it for the test, it'll spit it back out. You save like 2 hours right there. So yeah, so I don't, that's the only kind of answer I could give there. Like use the agents, like, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is very specific to the tool you're using. So for instance, like if you're on Cursor a lot, so there are rules that in Cursor that you can set up, right? And then there are so many rules you can pick from. And those rules will help you either do some of these things faster or at least provide some type of guardrail so it's not like taking from over the web. There are also tools I remember that will help with making sure your context's up to date. Like for instance, a lot of times, if you're trying to code something with the outdated version of the API, right, you're gonna have code that won't work. So there are some tools that will say, okay, they'll find the latest one and then use the latest one, so the syntax is correct. So these are some of the things that I know of that could be helpful.
So I noticed that I use Visual Studio Code, and you can log in so that you can incorporate GitHub Copilot right there. And so what I've noticed is I plan my code. I still code. I still code at my level. I'm still coding. So I would put comments, like, I would lay out my logic in comments, right? Like, hey, I'm going to do this here. I'm going to do this here. And the Copilot picks up on that. It says, oh, you want to do this. You want to create a function that this is. You want to iterate through this, whatever. And then as I'm start typing, like, I'll just make an example. This is a very simple example. I'll create a for loop or something. It's like for, and then it starts writing all the code for me. And I'm like, well, first of all, sometimes that's super annoying, because that's not the data frame I'm trying to go through, or that's not the variable. But it's interesting that it's trying to get some ideas what you're trying to do and trying to auto-complete some of the stuff. I would say half the time it gets it right and half the time it's wrong, but probably it's learning from how I use it. So from that perspective, it's less typing for me. So I just hit tab, tab, tab. I like it or I don't like it. I just keep right over it. So that's how I incorporate AI agent. But I do kind of like code planning, right, in pseudocode, and then it learns from how to generate real code from the pseudocode. So that helps, but that's still like a programmer type of trick, right? Like you're planning your pseudocode, and a human's doing that. It won't like write all your code for you. So, and that saves a lot of time. So you don't have to type in every single letter that you need to do.
Great. I want to switch gears and maybe talk a bit about product management a bit. I know for the most part, we talked about using AI tools or coding agents in software development or for data teams. But are you, as a product implementer or product manager, are you being asked to integrate AI into your core feature set so that the users are having some type of, I guess, elevated experience with your product?
So for the company I currently work at, Simple Exam, there's a lot of regulation because you're producing legal documents. But a lot of the people that are using our product are kind of more the early adopter type people. So they're highly trained doctors. They like to, see themselves as experts. So they want to use AI to help them generate reports, help them generate histories, help them understand things quickly. They're also at the same time super worried about the inaccuracies that it could produce. But a lot of them are also solo entrepreneurs. So anytime that they could save money or time, they're going to go for it, regardless of how bleeding edge it is. So I would say in general, a lot of people are expecting AI or attributing things to being AI all the time in products. I've also done consulting for another company that was for agentic AI, and the idea was that you could have this kind of endless permissioning for like agency for agentic AI. So that kind of stuff is getting a little bit more leery, and I think a lot of people are starting to understand what agency means and permissioning means, and it's becoming more colloquial along the customer market. And so people are, the biggest thing that's kind of coming up because of that is, how do you generate trust in what you're developing and the products that you're using to have AI? So, how am I communicating to the customers that they can trust a product that can tell their shopping pattern? or how can I tell users that it's okay to trust a product that, is, changing their photos, for instance, right? Because people have a lot of personal moments in photos. So stuff like that. These are all like big questions that are coming up on the product side for me.
Mm-hmm. Interesting insight. Chiara, anything to add
Yeah,
there?
I think it was like the customers having this elevated experience or wanting more AI. Is that the original? Yeah, we
Yes.
actually have our original thing. I think it came out like last year, something called Sidekick, and it is basically a chatbot that is backed by an LLM. I can't remember if we use. I think we use OpenAI. But they kind of will. You can ask the questions. This app in my portfolio, is it the same as this other app? And it'll tell you like ways that you can maybe merge your apps. Like, oh, you don't need both of these subscriptions. You can maybe just do one of them. And so that's kind of in there with an AI chatbot. And most recently, this whole thing, because a lot of customers want to know if there's AI and is it training on my data for the things that I am paying for my company. So that has been something that has been like expected and asked for that came out recently. So it is definitely people are expecting it, customers are expecting it, and it's coming in to play.
Okay.
Yeah, I know an entrepreneur that is creating a customer chatbot for Airbnb kind of renters, like the managers who manage a lot of Airbnb assets. So what happens is that obviously, having an agent is great because it's 24/7. They can answer a lot of questions. So, but you can't really test all the cases that a customer might say, right? They can't test all the cases. It's infinite number of words, right? So there was one case where a customer says, "Hey, I forgot my favorite tennis running shoe at the Airbnb, and I already took the plane. I'm back home." And then the chatbot agent goes, "No problem, I'll mail it to you." Okay. And that wasn't a policy that the Airbnb realtor had. So he complained to the developer, like, "Why did your agent do this?" And the agent was trained to be like super kind and friendly. So it seemed like that seems like a very feasible thing you can do. So anyway, he had to kind of come out of pocket and pay for that pair of shoes to be mailed back to the customer. So that, a little bit difficult to control, because how would you know what people are asking?
Yeah.
Now that he knows that, he's like, okay, I'm going to code this particular case, but what about the next case? Like, I don't know what the customer is going to ask for. Like, hey, your ceiling fan fell on me. Oh, no worries. We'll compensate you for that. Like, I don't know what's going to ask. So it's a little bit kind of like, yes, it's really helpful to ask, like, I'm locked out. How do I unlock the door? Or where do I find the laundry, detergent? Like, things like that is good. But, but when you have a chatbot talking to the consumer directly, it's always a little bit nebulous, like from a product person, like, how do you, put the guardrails in place? Like,
yeah, it's hard.
Spend no more than $100 on any customer. Like, I don't know, whatever that may be. Like,
yeah, I think a lot of it is just making sure there's a box around what they can answer to, but then defining that box, that parameter. I think that's the hard part, right? How do you make sure they don't go out of bounds?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we'll have to discover along the way.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll. I don't know if anybody has any question. We're almost at the end of the webinar. Anybody has any questions? Any last minute questions?
So I just want, like, last comment. Like, this is kind of very personal to me because I have a son who's actually in CS, and he asks me all the time, "Am I gonna have a job, Mom, when I'm done?" I said, "Don't worry, you're an A student."
Exactly.
You know all the ins and outs of software engineering, and you know how the algorithms work. You know how to code it in C, Java, whatever, assembly. They're learning assembly. And so I said, your skill is the robot should help you with being more productive. I don't think at this point it's going to completely replace humans, especially humans that are like very technical, like on the coding side, right? It's really augmenting humans in product management side, testing side, and all that. Like we don't have a tester anymore, right? We just create test cases, right? And the developers are running the test cases, and we have CI/CD and all that. But coders, we still do. The people who are doing that, we still have data architects and things like that, because robots create very funky schemas. And so I think, and also like being more broad, like what Mark says, like not just learning coding, like it used to be technical, oh, just deep dive into technical, but learn more about business, learn more about communication, learn more about how to explain your ideas in a simple form. That's all still very relevant, I think, in the upcoming, as you're, finishing your degree, whoever people are, because I get this a lot, because, I do a lot of mentorship. And so people ask me like, oh, I'm about to finish my CS degree or data science degree. Do I even need it? Like, they can just AI the model and stuff. I'm like, yeah, you still need it.
Yeah, I found a news article about this company, Klarna. I think they're a buy now, pay later company. They were really big on AI last year this time, but they have to roll back. Eventually, they have to put people first.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and there's another article about like some Swedish, Norwegian company that said they were like laid off a lot of their customer support people, and then they're going in all AI. They were pretty ahead of their game like about 2 years ago, and now they're rehiring some of the humans. Not as many, right? Like not all of them, but they're rehiring, a third or a half. People they laid off, because you still need a lot. Human in the loop is very important.
Yeah,
in AI.
for sure. Any other comments, questions before we wrap up?
I did read in the chat somebody talking about AI being confidently wrong, and I was kind of, me and Annie and them, we all talked about how confidently wrong things is when it comes to AI, and that's like the biggest thing I want to make mention is, you have to really second guess what you're seeing. I think that's embedded in a lot of the statements we're making, where they're saying, oh, it's right 50% of the time, or oh, it's not an optimal outcome or an optimal answer. But being able to check is invaluable. The difference between good and great is very small. And so right now you're getting okay answers even at that point. So, be smart about what you're doing with it, know what you don't know, or try to know what you don't know, to unbias your answers and get something that is closer to optimal.
Awesome. Nice takeaway. Chiara, any last final comment words?
No, I'm good. We're right at time, so.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you to all our panelists here. You guys did a great job. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.